different. It was going to be very difficult to educate people, to get them to refuse this horrific vaccine that they've got coming and targeting for us next. So I think that what we need to do, my call to action, is the global shedding of the mask. You know, if we could somehow organize people for 3 days to shed the mask. And I look at the 3 days as sort of like when Jesus died and descended into hell. In 3 days, he rose again. And I believe that in 3 days, if we could get 51% of the planet or 10% or what moved the stake to get people to refuse to wear the mask and throw it aside as a symbol of revolt, nonviolent civil disobedience, you know, a symbol of revolt, a symbol of that the hypnotic trance over everyone has been broken, a symbol to show people that they're not going to die if they don't wear a mask. That I believe that this kind of goes along. I've been listening to these wonderful speakers that you've lined up today and listening to what Zach Bush said and what Michael's just said about, you know, don't fight it, move in a different direction. Doing this, taking off of the mask for a 3-day symbolic descent and re-arising could be something that we could move the planet forward into a new direction of freedom, because people would get their brains back. They'd get their sovereignty back. They'd get control of their bodies back just by the removal of the mask.
Beautiful, Sherry. You know, Christmas is, I'm reading a meme here that came through actually as you were speaking, and it was so synchronous. It says Christmas is a time where everyone pretends that Santa exists, and when he really doesn't exist. Everyone comes together to lie to their kids. If you don't lie to the kids, you're shamed and even attacked. Regardless, the ritual dominates all things. COVID reflects our obsession with lie-based rituals. COVID exists as much as Santa or the Easter Bunny exists. Our culture's most valued currency, therefore, appears to be lies and deception.
Yes, and I think that goes right along with what you're saying. It's all fraud, all of it. I mean, the mask, the social distancing, the contact tracing, what they're trying to do is they're trying to separate us, put us into categories. They're trying to isolate us energetically. Then they want to tag us and trace us and make us into be like a herd of cattle. I don't think sheep is a good enough explanation. I think it's more like a herd of cattle. And so and everybody's just sort of lopping along with it. And I think that if we could get people to understand this whole thing about the mask, I think that the powers that be would understand the hypnotic trance has been broken, and they no longer have control over where they're taking us and moving the herd forward. So to me, it's probably one of the most important elements that we can deal with right now in terms of call to action, is because the other thing that it does is it removes the fear. And they have impregnated our brains, our bodies, our whole soul, our spiritual being with a spirit of fear. And fear and faith cannot operate in the same space. It's like trying to have a candle in a dark room. They can't operate in the same space. So if we could get people to undo the masks, that would release the fear. And sometimes you have to feel the fear and do it anyways. And that is the definition of faith.
Beautiful, Sherry. Thanks very much indeed. It's entirely true. Most people are wearing masks because they're afraid of their governments, not of a killer virus. If there was a real threat of a killer virus, no one would dare leave their house. And people comply because foundationally we're cowards. And I dare say we've been culturally and socially engineered to be that way. So much of it has got to do with the false light and the imposition of time and money and fear onto natural-born sovereign, limitless beings.
Exactly.
I mean, and with that Babylonian, dare I say it, Roman Catholic Vatican complex interposition of money and usury and time and TikTok and scarcity economics. And as David and I discussed the other day with Judge Anna, the papal bulls of discovery, the papal bulls of scarcity, all that stuff appears to have socially and culturally engineered us into being these timorous little creatures, where even the gallant householder, the man, the protector, the provider, the one who's supposed to be out there on the front foot, protecting and defending his family, his kin, and the women folk, they are arguably the very worst and the most meek amongst us. And they're cowering indoors precisely because the only way they're able to nowadays prove their manhood is by being a provider, by getting Caesar's dime, getting the dollar. And if you can't get the dollar, if you're being threatened with having that dollar taken away from you, if you don't conform to policy, then of course you've been all but emasculated. And that's so much of the problem that we're facing, is that spirit has been torn from us. But Sherry, you speak to it so beautifully, and we're very, very grateful for that. I'll tell you what, that mask or unmasking campaign, please count on me, count on us to be fully behind that campaign. We should translate that into 26 languages and get that out to the world. We should really syndicate that, because I also agree. I think it comes down to totems like that. You tear off that goddamn mask in the first instance, and you're halfway there.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And, you know, back to what just in closing comments, Sasha, of what you said about men. I mean, back in the day when men were faced against tyranny, they rose up and they went forward and they rode their horses and picked up their spears and screamed freedom. And now what they do instead is they go, well, I guess I better behave. And so, you know, to put that power of the soul back in men as
Right.
the leader, and the voice of the women behind them supporting their men, so that those are co-creators of power going forward. I mean, God created man and women to be equal partners here. You know, that's where, you know, a woman was made from the rib of man, the middle of him, not the top or the bottom, to be a co-creator in power. And we've got both sides of the power equation here in this seminar and other things that you, Sasha and Imani, have put together to really move this forward powerfully. And if we together pulled off the mask on a global perspective for a 3-day revolt, nonviolent civil disobedience,
Yes.
we will win.
Good, done. Sherry, count on us. And, you know,
Thank you, Sherry.
indeed, speaking of real men, we could